Om Sairam, Sai Satcharitra Chapter 6 Topics. The Ramanavami Festival, Repairs to the Masjid. Before describing the Ramanavami festival and masjid repairs, the author makes some preliminary remarks about the Sadguru. Efficacy of the Guru's touch. When the Sadguru is the helmsman, he is sure to carry us safely and easily beyond the worldly ocean. The word Sadguru brings to mind Sai Baba. He appears to me as if standing before me and applying udi, that is the sacred ashes, to my forehead and placing his blessing hand on my head. Then joy fills my heart and love overflows through my eyes. Wonderful is the power of the Guru's touch. The subtle body, consisting of thoughts and desires, cannot be burned by the world dissolving fire, but it is destroyed by the mere touch of the Guru's hand, and the sins of many past births are washed away. Even the minds of those who feel annoyed when they hear religious talk attains calmness. Seeing Sai Baba's handsome form chokes our throats with joy, makes the eyes overflow with tears, and overwhelms the heart with emotions. It awakens in us I am the Brahman consciousness, manifests in us the joy of self realization, dissolves the distinction of I and thou, and immediately makes us one with the Supreme Being. When I begin to read scriptures, at every step I am reminded of my Sadguru, and Sai Baba assumes the form of Rama or Krishna and makes me listen to his life. For instance, when I sit and listen to the Bhagavad, Sai becomes Krishna from top to toe, and I think he sings the Bhagavad for the welfare of his devotees. When I begin to talk, I at once remember Sai's stories to enable me to give suitable illustrations. When I myself start to write anything, I cannot compose a few words of sentences. But when he, of his own accord, makes me write, I go on writing and there is no end to it. When the disciple's egoism props up, he presses it down with his hand and gives him his power, makes him gain his object, and thus satisfies and blesses him. If anyone prostrates before Sai and surrenders heart and soul to him, then unsolicited, the main objects of life, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, are easily attained. The four paths of karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti lead us separately to God. Of these, the path of bhakti is thorny and full of pits and ditches, and thus is difficult to traverse. But if you, relying on your Sadguru, avoid the pits and thorns and walk straight, it will take you to the ultimate destination. After philosophizing about the self existent Brahman, his power, Maya, to create this world, the world thus created, and stating that these three are ultimately one and the same, the author quotes Sai Baba's words guaranteeing the welfare of his devotees. There will be any dearth or scarcity of food and clothes in any devotee's homes. It is my special characteristic that I always look to and provide for the welfare of those devotees who worship me wholeheartedly, with their minds always fixed on me. Lord Krishna has also said the same in Gita, therefore strive not for food and clothes. If you want anything, beg of the Lord, forget worldly honors, try to get the Lord's grace and blessings and be honored in his court. Do not be deluded by worldly honor. The form of the deity should be firmly fixed in one's mind. Let all the senses and mind be devoted always to worship of the Lord, and let there be no attraction for any other thing. Find the mind in remembering me always, so that it will not wander elsewhere towards body, wealth, and home. Then it will be calm, peaceful, and carefree. This is the sign of the mind being well engaged. If the mind is vagrant, it cannot be called well merged. After quoting these words, the author goes on to relate the story of the Ramanavami's festival in Shirdi. As Ramanavami is the greatest festival celebrated in Shirdi, another fuller account, as published in the Sai Leela magazine of 1925, is also referred to, and a summary of the festival as related in both this account is attempted here. Origin: Mr. Gopal Rao Gund was a circle inspector at Kopargaon. He was a great devotee of Baba. He had three wives but initially had no children. With Sai Baba's blessings, a son was born to him. Due to the joy that he felt about this, the idea of celebrating a fair of Urus occurred to him in the year 1897, and he placed it for consideration before other Shirdi devotees like Tatya Patil, Dada Pote Patil, and Madhavrao Deshpande. They all approved of the idea and got Sai Baba's permission and blessings. Then an application to get the collector's sanction for celebrating the Urus was submitted. But as the village official was against holding the fair, the sanction was refused. But as Sai Baba had blessed it, they tried again and ultimately succeeded in getting the collector's sanction. The day of the Urus was fixed on the Ramanavami day. After consultation with Baba, it seemed he had some reason for doing this: the unification of the two fairs or festivals, the Urus and the Ramanavami, and thereby the unification of the two communities, the Hindus and the Muslims. As future events showed, this objective was achieved. Though permission was obtained, other difficulties cropped up. Shirdi was a small village and there was a scarcity of water. There were two wells in the village. The main well dried up very soon and the water from the second was brackish. This brackish water was turned into sweet water by Saibaba by throwing flowers into it. The water of this well was still insufficient, and so Tatya Patil had to arrange to get water from a distant well. Then temporary shops had to be constructed and wrestling bouts were arranged. Gopal Rao Gund had a friend named Damu Annakasar of Ahmednagar. He was also similarly unhappy in the matter of progeny, though he had married twice. He too was blessed by Sai Babas with son, and Mr. Gun prevailed upon his friend to prepare and supply a small flag for the procession in the fair. He also succeeded in inducing Mr. Nana Sahib Nimonkar to supply another embroidered flag. Both these flags were taken in procession through the village and were finally fixed at the two corners of the masjid. This is being done even now. The sandal procession. There was another procession which was started during the fair. The idea for a sandal procession originated with Mr. Amir Shakhar Dalal, a Muslim devotee from Korhala. This procession is held in honor of great Muslim saints. Sandal paste and scrapings are put on a flat dish, and these are carried with incense burning in the dish through the village with music playing in the background. And after returning to the masjid, the contents of these dishes are applied on the nimbar and walls of the masjid by hand. This work was managed by Mr. Amish Shakar for the first 3 years and then afterwards by his wife. Thus, on the same day, the two processions, the flags by the Hindus and that of sandal by Muslims, went on side by side and are still going on without any hitch. Arrangement. This day was very dear and sacred to Baba's devotees. Most of them turned up on the occasion and took a leading part in the management of the fair. Tatya Kote Patil took care of all outward affairs while the internal management was left entirely to Radha Krishna Mai. She is a female devotee of Baba. Her residence was full of guests on the occasion and she had to take care of their needs and also arrange for all the paraphernalia of the fair. Another task which she willingly did was clean and whitewash the entire masjid, its walls and floors, which had been blackened by soot due to the burning dhuni. Dhuni is the sacred fire that Baba maintained, were cleaned and whitewashed. She did this during the night when Sai Baba went to sleep every alternate day in the chawdi. She had to take all the things out, including the dhuni itself, and after thorough cleaning and whitewashing, replace them as they were before. Feeding the poor, which was so dear to Sai Baba, was also a great item in the fair. For this purpose, cooking on a grand scale and the preparation of various sweet dishes was done in Radha Krishna Mai's house. Various wealthy devotees played a leading part in this process. Transformation of the Urus into the Ramanavami festival. The fair was operating in this way and was gradually increasing in importance until 1912 when a change took place. That year, a devotee, Mr. Krishna Rao Jageshwar Bhishma, the author of the pamphlet Sai Sagunopasana, came for the fair with Dada Saheb Kapade of Amravati and was staying in Dikshit's Wada. While he was lying on the veranda and while Kaka Mahajani was going down with puja materials to the masjid, a new thought arose in his mind and he accosted the latter thus: there is some providential arrangement in the fact that the fair is celebrated in Shirdi on the Ramanavami day. This day is very dear to all the Hindus too. Then why not begin the Ramanavami festival? Ramanavami festival is the celebration of the birth of Sri Rama. On this day, Kaka Mahajani liked the idea and it was arranged to get Baba's permission in this matter. The main difficulty was finding a Haridas who would perform the Kirtan. Kirtan is singing songs in praise of the Lord on the occasion. But Bhishma solved this difficulty by saying that his Rama Akhyan, composition of Rama's birth, was ready and that he would do the Kirtan himself, while Kaka Mahajani would play the harmonium. It was also arranged to get the Suntavada, that is the ginger powder mixed with sugar, as prasad prepared by Radha Krishna Mai. So they immediately went to the masjid to get Baba's permission. Baba, who was omniscient, asked Mahajani what was going on in the Vada. Mahajani could not catch the purport of the question and remained silent. Then Baba asked Bhishma what he had to say. He explained the idea of celebrating the Ramanavami festival and asked for Baba's permission, and Baba gladly gave it. Everyone rejoiced and made preparations for the Jayanti festival. The next day, the masjid was decorated with the buntings. A cradle was supplied by Radhakrishna Mai and placed in front of Baba's seat, and the proceedings began. Bhishma stood up for the kirtan while Mahajani played the harmonium. Saibaba sent a man to call Mahajani. He was hesitant to go and doubted whether Baba would allow the festival to go on. But when he went to Baba, the latter asked him as to what was going on and why the cradle was placed there. He answered that the Ramanavami festival had commenced and the cradle had been placed there for that purpose. Then Baba took a garland and placed it around Mahajani's neck and sent another garland for Bhishma. Then the kirtan commenced. When it came to a close, shouts of victory to Rama were heard and gulal, that's the red powder, was thrown all around. Everybody was overjoyed when suddenly roaring was heard. The red powder thrown promiscuously all around went up and somehow entered Baba's eyes. Baba got wild and began to yell loudly. Most people got frightened by the scene and took to their heels. Some intimate devotees who knew Baba well took the scoldings as a blessing in disguise. They thought that when Rama was born, it was proper for Baba to get wild and enraged to kill Ravana and his demons, egoism, and wicked thoughts. Besides, they knew that whenever a new thing was undertaken at Shirdi, it was normal for Baba to get wild and angry, and so they kept quiet. Radha Krishna Mai was rather afraid and thought that Baba might break a cradle, and she asked Mahajani to bring the cradle back. When he went to loosen and unfasten the cradle, Baba asked him to remove it. Then, after some time, Baba became calm, and that day's program, including the Mahapuja and Aarti, was completed. Later on, Mahajani asked Baba for permission to remove the cradle, and Baba refused, saying that the festival was not yet finished. The next day, another kirtan and Gopal Kala ceremony were performed, and it was then that Baba allowed the cradle to be removed. In the Gopal Kala ceremony, an earthen pot containing parched rice mixed with curd is hung, only to be broken after the kirtan. The contents of the pot are distributed to everyone. This was done by Lord Krishna among his cowherd friends. During the Ramanavami festival, the procession of the two flags during the day and that of the sandal by night went off with the usual pomp and show. From this time onward, Baba's Urus was transferred into the Ramanavami festival. From the very next year, that is 1913, the items on the program of the Rama Navami festival began to increase. Radha Krishna Mai started a Nama Sapatha, singing the glories of God's name continuously day and night for 7 days, the first of Chaitra. For this, several devotees took part in turns and she also joined it sometimes early in the morning. As the Ramanavami festival is celebrated in many places all over the country, the difficulty of finding a Haridas was felt again. But 5 or 6 days before the festival, Mahajani accidentally met Balabuba Mali, who was known as modern Tukharam, and got him to perform the kirtan that year. The next year, 1914, Balabuba Satharkar from Brihatsiddha Kavate could not perform as a Haridas in his own town as plague was raging in his town. So he came to Shirdi and with Baba's permission, which was secured through Kaka Sahib Dikshit, performed the kirtan and was sufficiently recompensed for his labor. The difficulty of getting a Haridas every year was finally solved in 1914. Sai Baba entrusted this function to Das Ganu Maharaj permanently. He successfully conducted the kirtans for several years. Since 1912, the festival has grown gradually every year. From the 8th to the 12th of Chaitra, Shirdi looked like a beehive of people. Shops began to increase, celebrated wrestlers took part in wrestling bouts, and feeding of the poor was done on a grander scale. The hard work and the sincere effort of Radha Krishna might turn Shirdi into Sansthan, that's organization. Paraphernalia increased too. A beautiful horse, a palanquin, chariot, and many silver things like pots, buckets, pitchers, mirrors, etc. were donated for the festival. Elephants were also sent for the procession. Though all this paraphernalia increased substantially, Sai Baba ignored all those things and maintained his simplicity. It is to be noted that both Hindus and Muslims have been working in unison during both the processions and during the entire festival. There has been no hitch or quarrel between them so far. At first, about 5,000 to 7,000 used to attend, but that figure went up to 75,000 in some years, and yet there has been no outbreak of any epidemic or riots worth mentioning in all these years. This is the testament of Baba's power to reunite people of all religions. Repairs to the masjid. Another important idea occurred to Gopal Rao Gun. Just as he had started the Urus of or the fair, he was inspired to put the masjid in order. In order to carry out the repairs, he collected stones and had them dressed, but this work was not assigned to him. These were reserved for Nana Sahib Chandorkar and the payment was assigned to Kaka Sahib Dikshit. At first, Baba was unwilling to allow them to have this work done, but with the intervention of Malsapati, a close devotee, his permission was secured. When the payment was completed in the masjid, Baba began to use a small cushion pad of his seat, discarding the usual piece of sackcloth used till then. In 1911, the Sabha Mandap, the courtyard, was also repaired with great labor and effort. The open space in the front of the masjid was very small and inconvenient. Kaka Sahib Dikshit wanted to extend it and put proofing on it. At great expense, he bought iron posts, pillars, and trusses and started the work. At night, all the devotees worked hard and fixed the post. Baba, when he returned from the Chavdi the next morning, uprooted them all and threw them out. Once it so happened that Baba got very angry, caught a pole with one hand and began to shake and uproot it, and with the other hand held Tatya Patil's neck. He took by force Tatya's peta. Peta is that a piece of cloth that is tied on the head like a turban. Struck a match, set it on fire, and threw it in a pit. Baba's eyes flashed like burning embers, and no one dared to look at him. Everyone got terribly frightened. Baba took a rupee from his pocket and threw it there as if it were an offering on auspicious occasion. Tatya was also very frightened. No one knew that what was going to happen to Tatya and no one dared to interfere. Bhagoji Shinde, the leper devotee, made a bold advance but was pushed away by Baba. Madhavrao was also similarly treated and was pelted with pieces of brick. All those who went to intercede were similarly dealt with, but after some time Baba's anger cooled. He sent for a shopkeeper, bought from him an embroidered peta and tied it on Tatya's head as if he was being given a special honor. Everyone was wonderstruck to see Baba's strange behavior. They were at a loss to know what raged Baba so suddenly, what had led him to assault Tatya Patil, and why his anger cooled down the very next moment. Baba was sometimes very calm and quiet and said sweet things with love, but soon afterwards, with or without any pretext, got enraged. Many such incidents may be related, but I do not know which to choose and which to omit. I therefore refer to them to Baba inspires me too. Om Sairam, end of chapter 6. Om Sairam, Sai Satcharitra Chapter 7. Topics: The Wonderful Incarnation, Sai Baba's behavior, his yogic practices, his all pervasiveness, the leper devotee service, Master Karpade's plague, and going to Pandharpur. The Wonderful Incarnation. Sai Baba knew every yogic practice possible. He was well versed in six processes, which included Dauti, that is stomach cleaning, Khanda Yoga, separating his limbs and joining them again, and Samadhi. If you thought that he was a Hindu, he looked like a Muslim. If you thought he looked like a Muslim, he appeared to be the pious Hindu. No one really knew whether he was a Hindu or a Muslim. He celebrated the Hindu festival of Ramanavami with all due formalities and at the same time permitted the sandal procession of the Muslims. He encouraged wrestling bouts in this festival and gave good prizes to winners. When it was time for the Gokulashtami, he got the Gopala Kala ceremony duly performed. And during the Eid festival, he allowed Muslims to say their prayers in his masjid. Once during the Muharram festival, a few Muslims proposed constructing a tajia or tabut in the masjid, keeping it there for a few days and afterwards taking it in procession through the village. Sai Baba allowed keeping the tabut for 4 days. On the fifth day, had it removed without the least compunction. If we were to say that he was a Muslim, his ears were pierced according to the Hindu custom at the time. If you think he was a Hindu, he advocated the practice of circumcision through, according to Mr. Nana Sahib Chandorkar, who observed him closely, Baba was not circumcised. If you call him Hindu, he always lived in the masjid. If Muslim, he always had the dhuni, sacred fire burning there. He also allowed the following things which are contrary to Muslim religion: blowing of the conch, ringing of bells, oblation of the fire, bhajan, and worship of Baba's feet with water. If you think that he was a Muslim, the best of Brahmins, forgetting their orthodox ways, fell prostrate at his feet. Those who went to find out about his origins were dumbfounded and were captured by his darshana. Thus, no one could discern whether Sai Baba was a Hindu or a Muslim. This is not surprising, for he who completely surrenders himself to the Lord and gets rid of his egoism and body consciousness, thus becomes one with him. Therefore, he has nothing to do with any question of religion. Sai Baba was such a being and saw no difference between religions or between beings. He ate meat and fish with fakirs, but did not grumble when dogs tried to eat from his dish. Sai Baba was such a unique and wonderful incarnation. On account of the merits in my past birth, I had the good fortune to sit at his feet and enjoy his divine love. The joy and delight I derived therefrom was incomparable. In fact, Sai Baba was pure divine bliss and consciousness. I cannot sufficiently describe his greatness and uniqueness. He who took delight at Baba's feet was established in his own self. Many sannyasis, sadhakas, and all sort of men aspiring for salvation came to Sai Baba. He always walked, talked, and laughed with them and always said the words Allah Malik, God is the sole owner. He never liked discussions or arguments. He was always calm and controlled. Though irritable at times, he always preached the Vedanta, and nobody knew till the end who Baba was. Princes, poor people were treated alike by him. He knew everyone's deepest secrets, and when he gave expressions to them, everyone was surprised. He was the repository of all knowledge, and yet he feigned ignorance. He also disliked honor. Such were the characteristics of Sai Baba, though he had a human body. His deeds testified to his divine nature. Everyone considered him the Lord God in Shirdi. Sai Baba's behavior. The fool that I am, I cannot describe Baba's miracles. He got almost all the temples in Shirdi repaired. Through Tatya Patil, the temples of Shani, Ganapati, Shankara Parvati, the village deity, and Maruti were put in order. His charity was also remarkable. The money he used to collect all Dakshina was distributed freely, 20 rupees to some and 15 or even 50 to others every day. People were immensely benefited by receiving Baba's darshana. Some became hale and hearty. Wicked people were turned into good ones. Leprosy was cured in some cases, with some blind got back their sight without any drops of medicines being put in their eyes. And lame ones were able to walk. Nobody could see the end of his extraordinary greatness. His fame spread far and wide, and pilgrims from everywhere flocked to Shirdi. Baba sat near the Dhuni and always meditated. He used to tie a white turban on his head and wore a clean white dhotar around his waist and a shirt on his body. This was his dress in the beginning. He started practicing medicine in the village, examined patients, and gave medicines. He was always successful and became famous as doctor. A curious case is narrated here. A devotee's eyeballs were very red and swollen. No doctor was available in Shirdi, and thus the other devotees took him to Baba. Other doctors would use ointments, cow's milk, and camphorated drugs in such cases. Baba's remedy was quite unique. He pounded some biba, marking nuts, and made two balls of them, thrust them on each eye of the patient, and wrapped a cloth bandage around both eyes. The next day, the bandage was removed and water was poured over them in a stream. The inflammation had subsided and the pupils had become white and clear. Though the eyes were very delicate, the bee bug caused no smarting but removed the disease of the eyes. Many such cases were cured, and this is only an instance in point. Baba's yogic practices. Baba knew all the process and practices of yoga. We will attempt to describe two of the processes. Dauti, the cleaning process. Baba went to a well near a banyan tree, which was considerably distant from the masjid, every third day and washed his mouth and had a bath. On one occasion, he was seen vomiting out his intestines, cleaning them and placing them on a tray to dry. There are persons in Shirdi who have actually seen this and have testified to the fact. Ordinary dhoti is done during a mostan piece of cloth, a piece of linen, 3 inches broad and 22.5 feet long. This piece is indigested and allowed to remain in the stomach for about half an hour and is taken out. But Baba's dhoti was quite unique and extraordinary. Khanda Yoga. In this practice, Baba extracted various limbs from his body and left them separated at different places in the masjid. Once a gentleman went to masjid and saw Baba's limbs lying separately at different places. He was terrified and he first thought of running to the village officers and informing them of Baba being hacked to pieces and murdered. He thought that he would be held responsible as he was the first informant and thus knew something of the affair. So he kept silent, but the next day, when he went to masjid, he was very surprised to see Baba hail heartily and sound. He thought that what he had seen the previous day was only a dream. Baba practiced yoga from a very early age, but nobody knew the proficiency he had attained. He charged no fees for his cures, became renowned and famous by virtue of his merits, and gave health to many a poor and suffering person. This famous doctor of doctors did not care for his own interest, but always worked for the good and welfare of others, sometimes suffering unbearable and terrible pain in the process. One such instance is given below and it will show the all pervasive and extremely merciful character of Sai Baba. Baba's all pervasiveness and mercy. In the year 1910, Baba was sitting near the Dhuni on Diwali day and warming himself. He was pushing firewood into the Dhuni, which was burning brightly. A little later, instead of pushing logs of wood, Baba pushed his arm into the Dhuni. The arm was burnt immediately. This was noticed by the servant Madhava and also by Madhavrao Deshpande, who is also Parshama. They at once ran to Baba and Madhavrao clasped Baba by his waist from behind and dragged him forcibly backwards and asked Deva, "Why did you do this?" Then Baba came to his senses and replied, "The wife of a blacksmith at some distant place was working the bellow of a furnace. When her husband called her, she forgot that her child was on her lap. She ran hastily and the child slipped into the furnace. I immediately thrust my hand into the furnace and saved the child. I do not mind my arm being burnt, but I am glad that the life of the child was saved." The leper devotees service. On hearing the news of Baba's hand being burnt, Mr. Nana Sahib Chandorkar, accompanied by the famous doctor Parmanand of Bombay with his medical kit consisting of ointments, lints, and bandages, rushed to Shirdi. Nana Sahib requested Baba to allow Dr. Parmanand to examine the arm and dress the burn. Baba refused this treatment. Since then, the arm was dressed by the leper devotee Bhagoji Shinde. His treatment consisted of massaging the burned part with ghee and then placing a leaf over it and securing it tightly with bandages. Mr. Nana Sahib Chandorkar asked Baba many a times to unfasten the bandages and have the wound examined, dressed, and treated by Dr. Parmanand so that it would heal quicker. Dr. Parmanand himself made similar requests, but Baba postponed it, saying that Allah was his doctor and that Allah did not allow his arm to be examined. Dr. Parmanand's medicines were not exposed to the air in Shirdi, but he had the good fortune of receiving Baba's darshana. Bagoji was allowed to treat the hand daily, and after a few days, the arm healed, and everyone was happy. We do not know whether any trace of pain remained. Every morning, Bagoji went through his program of loosening the bandages, massaging the arm with ghee, and tightly bandaging it again. This went on till Sai Baba's Mahasamadhi. Sai Baba, a perfect sage, did not really need this treatment, but out of love for his devotee, he allowed the upasana, that is, the service, to go on uninterrupted. When Baba left for the Lindi, Bagoji held an umbrella over him and accompanied him. Every morning, when Baba sat near the post close to the Dhuni, Bagoji was present and started his service. Bagoji was a sinner in his past birth. He was suffering from leprosy. His fingers had shrunk and his body was full of pus and smelled badly. Though he seemed so unfortunate on the outside, he was really very lucky and happy, for he was Baba's premier servant and thus got the benefit of his darshana. Master Karpade's play. I shall now relate another instance of Baba's wonderful leelas. Mrs. Karpade, the wife of Mr. Dada Sahib Karpade of Amrati, was staying at Shirdi with her young son. One day the son got a high fever which further developed into bubonic plague. The mother was frightened and felt very uneasy. She thought of leaving for Amrati and went to ask Baba for permission to leave in the evening. When Baba was near the Vada, that is the Samadhi Mandir, she informed him in a trembling tone that her dear son was down with plague. Baba spoke kindly and softly to her, saying that the sky is beset with clouds, but they will melt and pass, and everything will be smooth and clear. Saying this, he lifted his kafni to the waist and showed everyone present four fully developed lumps as big as eggs and added, "See how I have to suffer for my devotees. The difficulties are mine." Seeing this unique and extraordinary miracle, people were convinced as to how saints suffer pains for their devotees. The mind of the saint is softer than wax. They love their devotees without any edge of gain and regard them as their true relatives. Going to Pandharpur and staying there. We shall close this chapter of relating a story illustrating how much Sai Baba loved his devotees and how he anticipated their wishes. Mr. Nana Sahib Chandorkar, a great devotee of Baba, was Mamaldar at Nandurbar in Khandesh. He was transferred to Pandharpur. His devotion to Sai Baba bore fruit, as he got an order to go and stay at Pandharpur, which is regarded as Bhuvaikuntha, that is heaven on earth. Nana Sahib had to report to work soon after he received the order. So he left immediately without even writing or informing anybody at Shirdi. He wanted to surprise Baba by visiting Shirdi, his Pandharpur, to see and bow before his Vithoba, that is Baba, and then proceed. Nobody dreamt of Nana Sahib's departure for Shirdi. But Sai Baba knew all about this and he was omniscient. As soon as Nana Sahib approached Neemgaon, a few miles from Shirdi, there was a stir in the masjid at Shirdi. Baba was sitting and talking to Malsapati, Appa Shinde, and Kashiram when he suddenly said, "Let us all sing some bhajans. The doors of Pandhari, the Pandharpur Maharaj, are open. Let us sing merrily." Then they all began to sing, the theme of the song being, "I have to go to Pandharpur and have to stay there, for it is the house of the Lord." Baba sang and the devotees followed him. A short while later, Nana Sahib arrived in Shirdi with his family, prostrated before Baba and requested him to accompany them to Pandharpur and stay there with them. The devotees told Nana Sahib that Baba was already in the mood to go to Pandharpur and thus this invitation was unnecessary. Hearing this, Nana Sahib was moved and fell at Baba's feet. Then, after receiving Baba's permission, Udi, that is the sacred ashes and blessings, Nana Sahib left for Pandharpur. There is no end to Baba's stories, but let me now stop here. I will reserve for the next chapter other topics such as the importance of human life, Baba's living on arms, Bayaja Bhai's service, and a few other stories. Om Sairam. End of chapter 7. Om Sairam. Sai Satcharitra Chapter 8. Topics: the importance of a human birth, Sai Baba's begging food, Bayaji Bai's service, Sai Baba's dormitory, and his affection for Kushal Chand. The importance of a human birth. In this wonderful universe, God has created billions of creatures or beings, including gods, demigods, insects, beasts, and men, inhabiting heaven, hell, the earth, oceans, the sky, and other intermediate regions. Of this, those creatures or souls whose merits preponderate go to heaven and live there till they enjoy the fruits of their action. And when this is done, they are cast down. On the other hand, souls whose sins are demerits preponderate go down to hell and suffer the consequences of their misdeeds for so long time as they deserve. When their merits and demerits balance each other out, they are born on earth as human beings and are given a chance to work out their salvation. Ultimately, when their merits and demerits are both completely destroyed, they get their deliverance and become free. To put the matter in a nutshell, souls get their birth or transmigration according to their deeds and intelligence, the development of their minds. The special value of the human body. As we all know, four things are common to all creatures: food, sleep, fear, and sexual union. Man, however, is endowed with a special faculty, knowledge, with the help of which he can attain divine vision, which is impossible in any other birth. It is for this reason that even the gods envy man's fortune and aspire to be born as men on earth so as to get their final deliverance. Some say that there is nothing worse than the human body, which is full of filth, mucus, phlegm, and dirt. It is subject to decay, disease, and death. This is no doubt true to a certain extent, but in spite of these drawbacks and defects, the special value of the human body is that man has got the capacity to acquire knowledge. It is only due to human knowledge that one can think of the perishable and transitory nature of the body itself and the world, and thereby develop disgust for sense enjoyments. Thus, humans have the capacity to discriminate between the unreal and the real and thereby attain divine vision. So, if we reject or neglect the body because it is filthy, we lose the chance to attain self realization. And if we fondle it and run after sense objects, we go to hell. Therefore, the proper course for us to pursue is that the body should neither be neglected nor fondled, but should be properly cared for. Just as a traveler on horseback takes care of his horse till he reaches his destination and returns home, thus the body should always be used or engaged to attain self realization, which is the supreme end of life. It is said that though God created various creatures, he was not satisfied, for none of them was able to understand and appreciate his work. So he had to create a special being, man, and endow him with a special faculty, knowledge. And when he saw the man was able to appreciate his leelas, that is divine actions, he was very pleased and satisfied. Thus, it is good luck to get a human body and even better luck to have the resource of Sai Baba's feet and to surrender to him completely. Man's endeavor, realizing how precious human life is and knowing that death is certain and may snatch us at any time, we should always be alert to achieve the true objective of our lives. We should not delay this and should make every possible attempt to gain our object. Just as a widower is anxious to get himself married to a new bride, or just as a king leaves no stone unturned to seek his lost son. Similarly, with all earnestness and speed, we should strive to attain our end self realization. Casting aside sloth and laziness and warding off drowsiness, we should day and night meditate on the self. If we fail to do this, we reduce ourselves to the level of beasts. How should we proceed? The most effective and speedy way to gain our object is to approach a worthy Sadguru who has attained self realization. What cannot be achieved by hearing religious lectures and the study of religious work is easily obtained in the company of such worthy souls. Just as the sun alone gives light, which all the stars put together cannot do, the Sadguru alone imparts spiritual wisdom, which all sacred books and sermons cannot infuse. His movements and simple talk give us silent advice, the virtues of forgiveness, calmness, disinterestedness, charity, benevolence, control of mind and body, and humility are imbibed by the disciples when they are observed in such pure and holy company. This enlightens their minds and lifts them spiritually. Sai Baba was such a Sadguru. Though he acted as fakir, he was always engrossed in the self. He always loved all beings whom he saw God or divinity. He was not elated by pleasures and was not depressed by misfortunes. A king and a pauper were the same to him. He whose glance would turn a beggar into a king used to beg his food from door to door in Shirdi. Let us now see how he did it. Baba begging for food. Blessed are the people of Shirdi, in front of whose houses Baba stood as a beggar and called out, "Ho, lassie, give me a piece of bread," and spread out his hand to receive the same. In one hand he carried a tin pot and in the other a rectangular piece of cloth. He visited few houses every day and went from door to door. Liquid or semi-liquid things such as soup, vegetables, milk or buttermilk were received in the tin pot, while cooked rice, bread and other solid food was received in the cloth. Baba's tongue never knew taste as he had acquired control over it. So how could he care for the taste of the different things collected? Whatever food he received in his cloth and in the tin pot were mixed together and partaken by Baba to his heart's content. Whether particular things were tasty or not was never noticed by Baba, as his tongue was devoid of the sense of taste. Baba begged till noon, but his begging was very irregular. Some days he went a few rounds, on other days up to 12 noon. The food thus collected was emptied into a clay pot. Dogs, cats, and crows freely ate it, and Baba never drove them away. The woman who swept the floor of the masjid took 10 or 12 pieces of bread home, and Baba never prevented her from doing so. How could he, who even in his dreams never chased away cats and dogs by harsh words, refuse food to poor, helpless people? Blessed indeed is the life of such a noble person. People in Shirdi took him in the beginning for a mad fakir, and he was known in the village by this name. How could one who lived on alms and begged for a few crumbs of bread be revered and respected? But this fakir was very liberal, disinterested, and charitable. Though he looked fickle and restless from the outside, he was firm and steady on the inside. His ways were inscrutable. Yet, even in the small village, there were a few kind and blessed people who recognized and regarded him as a great soul. One such instance is given below. Bayajabai's brilliant service. Tatya Kote's mother, Bayajabai, used to go to the woods every noon with a basket on her head containing bread and vegetables. She roamed in the jungle for several miles, trampling over bushes and shrubs in search of the mad fakir. And once she found him, she fell at his feet. The fakir sat calm and motionless in meditation while she placed a leaf before him, spread the eatables, and fed him. Wonderful was her faith and service. Every day at noon, she roamed the jungle and lovingly forced Baba to eat her food. Her upasana, that is service, was never forgotten by Baba till his Mahasamadhi. Remembering the service she had rendered, Baba benefited her son magnificently. Both the son and the mother had great faith in the fakir, who was their god. Baba often said to them that medicancy was the real lordship, as it was everlasting, and the so called lordship was transient. After a few years, Baba stopped going into the woods, began to live in the village, and had his food in the masjid. From this time, Bayaji, by trouble of roaming in the jungle, ended. The dormitory of the trio. Blessed are the saints in whose hearts Lord Vasudev dwells, and fortunate indeed are devotees who get the benefit of the company of such saints. Two such fortunate fellows, Tatya Kote Patil and Bhagat Mahal Sapati, shared Sai Baba's company equally. Baba also loved them both equally. These three slept in the masjid with their heads towards the east, west, and north, and with their feet touching one another at the center. After preparing their beds, they lay on them, chatting and gossiping about many things till late night. If any one of them showed any signs of sleep, the others would wake him up. For instance, if Tatya began to snore, Baba at once got up and shook him from side to side and pressed his head. If it was Malasapati, Baba hugged him, stroked his legs, and kneaded his back. In this way, for a full 14 years, Tatya slept in the masjid instead of his house due to his love for Baba. How happy and memorable were those days! How does one measure that love, and how does one value Baba's grace? After his father passed away, Tatya took charge of household affairs and began to sleep at home. Kushal Chand of Rahata. Baba loved Ganpat Kote Patil of Shirdi. He also loved Chandraban Sheth Marwadi of Rahata equally. After the demise of the Shed, Baba loved his nephew Kushal Chand perhaps even more and cared for his welfare. Sometimes in a bullock cart and at other times in Tanga, with inmate friends, Baba went to Rahata. The people at that village came out and the musical instrument playing received Baba at the gate of the village and prostrated before him. Then he was taken into the village with a great pomp and ceremony. Kushal Chand took Baba to his house, seated him on a comfortable seat, and fed him a good lunch. Then they talked freely and merrily for some time. Baba returned to Shirdi after blessing everyone. Shirdi is midway between and equidistant from Rahata on one side south and Nimagaon on the other north. Baba never went beyond this. places during his lifetime. He never saw a train or traveled by it, and yet he knew the exact timing of the arrival and the departure of the trains. Devotees who acted according to Baba's instruction, which were given by him when they were living, fared well. Those who disregarded them suffered many a mishap and accident. More that this and other chapters will be told in the next chapter. Om Sairam, end of chapter 8.
Om Sai Ram, Sai Satcharitra Chapter 9. Topics: Effect of compliance and non compliance with Baba's orders, the necessity of mendicancy, the Tharkad family's experiences, how Baba was fed sumptuously. At the end of the last chapter, it was briefly stated that devotees who obeyed Baba's orders at the time of taking leave fared well, while those who disobeyed them suffered many a mishap. This statement will be amplified and illustrated with a few striking instances. The special characteristic of Shirdi pilgrimage. One special feature of pilgrimage to Shirdi was that no one could leave Shirdi without Baba's permission, and if he did, he invited untold sufferings. But if anyone was asked to leave Shirdi, he could stay there no longer. Baba gave certain hints when devotees went to bid him goodbye. These suggestions had to be followed. If they were not followed or were departed from, accidents were sure to befall those who acted contrary to Baba's directions. A few instances are given below. Tatya Kote Patil. Tatya Kote was once going in a tanga, that is horse-drawn cart, to the Kopargaon Bazaar. He came hastily to the masjid, greeted Baba and said that he was going to the Kopargaon Bazaar. Baba said, "Don't hurry, wait a little, forget the bazaar and don't leave the village." On seeing his anxiety to go, Baba asked him to take Shama, Madhavrao Deshpande. Disregarding Baba's direction, Tatya Kote immediately drove off in his tanga. Of the two horses that pulled the tanga, one was very active and restless. After passing a well, it began to run rashly, sprained its waist, and fell. Tatya was not badly hurt, but was reminded of Mother Sai's direction. On another occasion, while proceeding to Kulhar village, he disregarded Baba's directions again and drove in a tanga which met with a similar accident. The European gentleman. A European gentleman from Bombay once came to Shirdi with an introductory note from Nana Sahib Chandorkar. He had some objective in mind and was comfortably accommodated in a tent. He wanted to kneel before Baba and kiss his hand. Therefore, he tried thrice to step into the masjid, but Baba prevented him from doing so. He was asked to sit in the open courtyard below and receive Baba's darshan from there. Not pleased with reception he got, he wanted to leave Shirdi at once and came to bid goodbye. Baba asked him to go the next day and not to hurry. People also requested him to abide by Baba's directions. Refusing to listen to this, he left Shirdi in a tanga. The horses ran all right at first, but upon passing a well, a bicycle crossed their path. The horses saw the bicycle, were frightened and ran faster. The tanga overturned and the gentleman fell and was dragged some distance. He was immediately rescued but had to be admitted to the Kopargaon hospital for the treatment for his injuries. Because of such experiences, everyone learned the lesson that those who disobeyed Baba's instructions met with accident in one or the other, and those who obeyed them were safe and happy. The necessity of medicancy. Now we return to the question of medicacy. A question may rise in the minds of some. If Baba was such a great personage, God in fact, why should he have recourse to the begging bowl all his life? This question may be considered and addressed from two standpoints. First one, who has the right to live by the begging bowl? Our religious scriptures say that those persons who get rid of three main desires for progeny, wealth, and for fame and accept sannyas are fit to live by begging. They cannot make cooking arrangements and dine at home. The duty of feeding them rests on the shoulders of householders. Sai Baba was not a householder, he was a celibate sannyasi. His firm conviction was that the universe was his home and he was the Lord Vasudev, the supporters of the universe and the imperishable Brahman. So he had the right to have recourse to the begging bowl. Second one, now from the standpoint of Pancha, soon, the five sins and their atonement, we all know that in order to prepare meals, householders have to go through five actions or process. Kandani, that is pounding, Peshani, that is grinding, Udakumbi, washing pots, Marjani, that is sweeping and cleaning, and Chulli, that is lightening earth. This process involved the destruction of lot of small insects and creatures, and thus the householders incur a lot of sins in order to atone for his sin. Our holy scriptures prescribe five kinds of sacrifices, namely Brahma Yajna and Vedadhyayan, offerings to Brahman or the study of Vedas, Pitra Yajna, offerings to the ancestors, Deva Yajna, offerings to the god, Bhuta Yajna, offerings to the spirits, Manushya Atiti Yajna, offerings to human uninvited guests. If these sacrifices enjoined by the scriptures are duly performed, the purification of their minds is effected, and this helps people to get knowledge and self-realization. Baba, in going from house to house, reminded the residents of their sacred duty, and fortunate were the people who received this lesson from Baba. Devotees' experiences. Now we to return to another more interesting subject. Lord Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita, "Whosoever devotedly offers to me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, that offering I wholeheartedly accept." In the case of Sai Baba, if a devotee really longed to offer anything to Sai Baba and he afterwards forgot to offer the same, Baba reminded him about the offering and then accepted it and blessed the devotee. A few instances are given below. The Tharkad family, it's a story about father and son. Mr. Ramachandra Atmaran alias Baba Saheb Tharkad, formerly a Prarthana Samajist, was a staunch devotee of Sai Baba. His wife and son loved Baba equally or perhaps more. It was once proposed that Master Tharkad would go with his mother to Shirdi and spend his vacation there. But the son was unwilling to go, as he thought that in case he left his home at Bandra, the worship of Sai Baba in the house would not be properly attended to. He felt that as his father was a Prarthana Samajist, he would not care to worship Sai Baba's enlarged portrait. However, when his father pledged that he would perform the worship exactly as the son had been doing, the mother and the son left to Shirdi one Friday night. The next day, that is Saturday, Mr. Tharkad got up early, bathed, and before proceeding with the prayer, prostrated himself before the shrine and said, "Baba, I am going to perform the prayer exactly as my son has been doing, but please let it not be formal drill." After he performed the prayer, he offered pieces of lump sugar as Naivedya. Naivedya is an offering of God, which was then served at lunchtime. That evening and on Sunday, everything went well. The following Monday was a working day and it also passed well. Mr. Tharkad, who had never performed puja, Like this, all his life felt great confidence in that everything was passing quite satisfactorily and in accordance with the promise given to his son. On Tuesday, he performed the morning prayer as usual and left for work. When he came home at noon, he found out there was no Naivedya to serve with the meal. He asked the cook, who told him that no offering had been made that morning and that he had completely forgotten to perform that part of the prayer. Upon hearing this, he left his seat and prostrated himself before the shrine, expressed his regret, at the same time chiding Baba for the want of guidance in making the whole affair a matter of mere drill. Then he wrote a letter to his son stating the facts and requested him to lay it before Baba's feet and ask for forgiveness for his mistake. This happened in Bandra on Tuesday at noon. At about the same time when the noon arati was about to commence in Shirdi, Baba said to Mrs. Tharkad, "Mother, I was at your house in Bandra looking for something to eat. I found the door locked. I somehow got inside and found to my regret that Bahu, that is Mr. Tharkad, had left nothing for me to eat, so I returned hungry." The lady could not understand anything, but the son who was close by understood that there was something wrong with the worship in Bandra. He therefore requested Baba to permit him to go home. Baba refused the permission but allowed him to perform the puja in Shirdi. Then the son wrote a letter to his father stating all that took place at Shirdi and implored his father not to neglect the worship. Both these letters crossed each other and were delivered to the respective parties the next day. Isn't that not astonishing? Mrs. Tharkad. Let us now take the case of Mrs. Tharkad herself. She offering three things: bharit, that is roasted eggplant mixed with yogurt and spice; kachariya, that is circular pieces of eggplant fried in ghee; and a peda, a sweet. Let us see how Baba accepted them. Once Mr. Raghuveer Bhaskar Purandare of Bhandra, a great devotee of Baba, left for Shirdi with his family. Before they left, Mrs. Tarkad went to Mrs. Pundare and gave her two eggplants and requested her to prepare bharit with one and kachariya with the other. She asked Mrs. Purandare to serve Baba with both these dishes. After reaching Shirdi, Mrs. Purandare went with her dish of bharit to the masjid. Baba was just about to start his meals and found that bharit were very tasty. So he distributed it to everyone and said that he wanted kachariyas now. A word was sent to Radha Krishna Mai that Baba wanted kachariyas. She was in a fix as that was no season for eggplant. When an enquiry was made as to who had bought the bharit, it was found that Mrs. Purandare was also entrusted with the duty of serving kachariyas. Everybody then came to know the significance of Baba's enquiry regarding kachariyas and were wonderstruck at Baba's all-pervasive knowledge. In December 1915, Govind Balaram Mankar wanted to go to Shirdi to perform the obsequies of his father. Before he left, he came to see Mr. Tharkad. Mrs. Tharkad wanted to spend some time with Baba. She searched the whole house but found nothing except a peda, an oval-shaped sweet, which had already been offered as Naivedya. Govind was in mourning, and yet out of devotion to Baba, she sent the peda with him, hoping that Baba would accept and eat it. Govind went to Shirdi and saw Baba but forgot to take the peda with him. Baba simply waited. When he again went to see Baba in the afternoon, he again forgot to take the peda with him. Baba could wait no longer and asked him, "What did you bring for me?" "Nothing," was the reply. Baba asked him again, and the same reply came forth again. Then Baba asked him the leading question, "Did the mother, Mrs. Tharkad, not give you some sweet for me?" Govind then remembered the whole thing. He felt abashed, asked for Baba's pardon, ran to his lodging, bought the peda, and gave it to Baba. As soon as Baba received it, he put it into his mouth and swallowed it. Thus, the devotion of Mrs. Tharkad was recognized and accepted. As men believe in me, so do I accept them, was proved in this case. Her Baba was fed sumptuously. Once, Mrs. Tharkar was staying in a certain house in Shirdi. At noon, meals were ready and dishes were being served when a hungry dog turned up there and began to bark and whine. Mrs. Tharkar got up at once and threw the dog a piece of bread, which the dog gulped with great relish. In the afternoon, when she went to masjid, Sai Baba said to her, "Mother, you have fed me sumptuously, up to my throat, and my afflicted prance have been satisfied. Always act like this, and this will stand you in good stead. Sitting in the masjid, I shall never ever speak anything but the truth. Take pity on me like this. First give bread to the hungry and then eat. Note this well. She could not at first understand the meaning of what Baba said. So she replied, "Baba, how could I feed you? I am myself dependent on others and take my food from them on payment." Then Baba replied, "Having eaten the lovely bread, I am very content and I am still blushing. The dog which you saw before your meal and to which you gave the piece of bread is one with me, and so are all the creatures on earth. I roam in their forms. He who sees me in all this creature is my beloved. So, abandon the sense of duality and distinction and serve me as you did today." Upon hearing this nectar like words, she was moved. Her eyes were filled with tears, her throat was choked, and her joy knew no bounds. Let's know the moral of the story. See God in all beings is the moral of the story. The Upanishads, the Gita, and the Bhagavad all exhort us to perceive God or divinity in all creatures. By the instance given at the end of this chapter and others too numerous to mention, Sai Baba has practically demonstrated to us how to put the Upanishadic teachings into practice. In this way, Sai Baba stands as the best exponent or teacher of the Upanishadic doctrines. Om Sairam. End of Sai Satcharitra Chapter 9. Om Sairam. Sai Satcharitra Chapter 10. Topics: Sai Baba's mode of life, Baba's wonderful bed, his stay in Shirdi, Sai Baba as a Sadguru, his teachings, his humility, the easiest path. Remember him, Sai Baba, always with love, for he was engrossed in everyone's welfare and was always immersed in his self. To remember him is to solve the riddle of life and death. This is the best and easiest of sadhanas as it involves no expenditure. A little exertion here brings great rewards. So, as long as our senses are sound, we should every minute of our lives practice the sadhana. Everything else is illusory, and the Guru is God. If we believe in the Sadguru's holy feet, he can change our fortune for the better. If we serve him well, we get rid of our samsara. We need not study any philosophy like the Nyaya and Mimasa if we make him our helmsman. He can easily help us cross the sea of all our pain and sorrows. Just as we trust the helmsman in crossing rivers and seas, we have to trust our Sadguru in getting over the ocean of worldly existence. The Sadguru looks at the intense feelings and devotion of his devotees and endows them with knowledge and eternal bliss. In the last chapter, Baba's medicancy, devotees' experiences, and other subjects were dealt with. Let the readers now hear where and how Baba lived, how he slept, and what he taught. Baba's wonderful bed. Let us first see where and how Baba slept. Mr. Nana Sahib Dengale bought Saibaba a wooden plank 6 feet in length and only 3/4 of a foot in breadth. Instead of putting the plank on the floor and sleeping on it, Baba tied it like a swing to the rafters of the masjid with old rags and commenced to sleep upon it. The rags were so thin and own out that it was a miracle that they could bear even the weight of the plank itself, let alone the weight of Baba. But somehow or the other, it was Baba's sheer Leela that the own out racks sustained the plank with the weight of Baba on it. At each of the four corners of this plank, Baba lighted panatis. Panatis are the small earthen lamps, and kept them burning the whole night. It was sight for the gods to see Baba sitting or sleeping on the plank. It was a wonderful, or it was a wonder to all, how Baba got on and off the plank. Out of curiosity, many careful observers kept watching the process of mounting and dismounting, but none succeeded in figuring it out. As crowds began to gather to watch this wonderful feat, Baba one day broke the plank into pieces and threw it away. Baba had all the eight siddhis or the powers at his command. He never practiced or craved for them. They came to him naturally as a result of his perfection. Sagun manifestation of Brahman. Though Sai Baba looked like a man, 5 feet 3 inches in height, he dwelt in everyone's heart. Inwardly, he was unattached and indifferent, but outwardly, he longed for public welfare. While inwardly very disinterested, he looked full of desires on the outside, while inwardly an abode of peace. He looked restless on the outside. On the inside, he had the state of Brahman, while outwardly he acted like the devil. Inwardly, he loved Advaita, while outwardly he got entangled with the world. Sometimes he looked upon everyone with affection, and at times he threw stones at them. Sometimes he scolded them, while at sometimes he embraced them and was calm, composed, and tolerant, and well balanced. He was always engrossed in the self and was well disposed towards his devotees. He always sat on one asan and never travelled. His satka was a small stick, and he always carried this in his hand. He was calm and thought free. He never cared for wealth or fame and lived by begging. This was the life he led. He always said the words, God is the real owner. Entire and unbroken was his love for his devotees. He was the mind aware of knowledge of the self and was full of divine bliss. Such was the divine form of Sai Baba, boundless, endless, and undifferentiated. The principle which envelops the whole universe, from a stone pillar to Brahma, incarnated in Sai Baba. People who were very fortunate got this treasure trove in their hands, while those people who did not know the real worth of Sai Baba took him to be a mere human being and continued to remain miserable. His stay in Shirdi and probable date of birth. No one knew of Baba's parents and his date of birth, but it can be determined approximately by his stay in Shirdi. Baba first came to Shirdi when he was about 16 years old and stayed here for 3 years. Then all of a sudden he disappeared for some time. He reappeared after some time in the Nizam state near Aurangabad and again came to Shirdi with the marriage party of Chand Patil when he was about 20 years old. Since then, he lived in Shirdi for a period of 60 years, after which Baba took his Maha Samadhi in the year 1980. From this, we can say that the year of Baba's birth is approximately 1838 AD. Baba's mission and advice. Saint Ramdas, who lived from 1608 to 1681, flourished in the 17th century and fulfilled to a great extent his mission of unity and harmony between religions. But within 2 centuries after him, The split between the two communities, the Hindus and the Muslims, widened again, and Sai Baba came to bridge the gulf. His constant advice to everyone was to this effect: Rama, the god of Hindus, and Rahim, the god of Muslims, were one and the same, and there was not the slightest difference between them. Then why should their devotees quarrel? You ignorant folk should join hands and bring both communities together. Act sanely, and thus you will gain your object of unity. It is not good to dispute and argue, so don't argue and don't emulate others. The Lord will protect you. Yoga, sacrifice, penance, and knowledge are the means to attain God. If you do not succeed in this by any means, vain is your birth. If anyone does any evil unto you, do not retaliate. If you can do anything, do some good unto others. This, in short, was Sai Baba's advice to everyone. And this will stand you in good stead, both in material and spiritual matters. Sai Baba as a Sadguru. There are different types of gurus on earth. There are many so called gurus who go about from the house to house with musical instruments in their hands and make a show of their spirituality. They blow mantras into the ears of their disciples and extract money from them. They profess to teach piety and religion to their disciples, but are themselves impious and irreligious. Sai Baba never thought of making the least show of his worth. He had nobody consciousness, but he had great love for his disciples. There are two types of gurus: Niyat, appointed, and Aniyat, unappointed. The latter, by their advice, develop the good quality in us, purify our hearts, and set us on the path of salvation. But contact with the former dispels the sense of difference between us and the divine. There are various gurus imparting to us various kinds of worldly knowledge, but he who fixes us in our nature, that is ourself, and carries us beyond the ocean of worldly existence is the Sadguru. Sai Baba was such a Sadguru. His greatness is indescribable. If anybody went to receive his darshana, Baba, without being asked, would give every detail of the seeker's past, present, and future life. He saw divinity in all beings. Friends and foes were alike to him. Disinterested and equally balanced, he obliged evildoers. He was the same in prosperity and adversity. Doubts never affected him. Though he possessed a human body, he was not in the least attached to his body or house. Though he looked embodied, he was really disembodied. Blessed are the people of Shirdi who worship Sai as their god while eating, drinking, walking in their backyards and fields and doing various household chores. They always remembered Sai and sang his glory. They knew no other god except Sai. How can one describe the love and sweetness of the women of Shirdi? They were quite ignorant, but their pure love inspired them to compose poems or songs in the simple rural language. Letters or learning they had none, yet one can still discern real poetry in the simple songs. It is not intelligence but love that inspires real poetry. Real poetry is the manifestation of true love, and this can be seen and appreciated by intelligent listeners. A collection of these folk songs is desirable, and Baba willing, some fortunate devotee may undertake the task of collecting and publishing these folk songs, either in the Sai Leela magazine or separately as a book. Baba's humility. The Lord is said to have six qualities: fame, wealth, non attachment, knowledge, grandeur, and generosity. Baba had all this in him. He incarnated in the flesh for the sake of his devotees. Wonderful was his grace and kindness. He drew his devotees to him from far. For the sake of his devotees, Baba spoke such words that for the goodness of speech one dare not utter. He is the specimen. Baba spoke the following humble words: Slave of slaves, I am your debtor. I am satisfied at your darshan. It is a great favor that I saw your feet. I am an insect in your excreta. I consider myself blessed thereby. What humility is this? If anybody thinks that by publishing this, any disrespect is shown to Sai, we beg his pardon, and to atone for this, we sing and chant Baba's name. Though Baba seemed outwardly to enjoy sense objects, he had no taste for them or even the consciousness of enjoying them. Though he ate, he had no sense of taste, and though he saw, he never felt any interest in what he saw regarding passion. He was as perfect a celibate as Hanuman. He was not attached to anything. He was pure consciousness, the resting place of desire, anger, and other feelings. In short, he was disinterested, free, and perfect. A striking instance may be cited in illustration of the statement. Nanavalli. There was in Shirdi a very quaint and queer fellow named Nanavalli. He used to look after some of Baba's cows. He once approached Baba, who was seated, and asked him to get up as he wanted to occupy the seat. Baba at once got up and left the seat, which Nanavali occupied. After sitting there a while, Nanavali got up and asked Baba to take his seat. Then Baba sat on the seat and Nanavali fell at his feet and went away. Baba did not show the slightest displeasure in being dictated to and ousted. Nanavali loved Baba so much that he breathed his last on the 13th day of Baba's Mahasamadhi. The easiest path, hearing the stories of the saints and being in their company. Though Sai Baba acted like an ordinary man, his action showed extraordinary intelligence and skill. Whatever he did was done for the good of his devotees. He never prescribed any yogic postures, regulations of breathing, or any rites to his devotees, and nor did he blow any mantra into their ears. He told them to forget all cleverness and always remember the word Sai, Sai. If you do that, he said, all your shackles will be removed and you will be free. Sitting between 5 fire sacrifices, chanting, and eightfold yoga are only for some people. They are of no use to the others. The function of the mind is to think. It cannot remain for a minute without thinking. If you give it a sense object, it will think about it. If you give it to a guru, it will think about the guru. You have heard attentively the greatness and grandeur of Sai. This is the natural remembrance, worship, and kirtan of Sai. Hearing the stories of the saints is not as difficult as the other sadhanas mentioned above. They dispel all fear of the samsara is worldly existence, and take you on a spiritual path. So, listen to the stories, meditate on them, and assimilate them. You may do or attend to your worldly duties, but give your mind to Sai and his stories, and then he is sure to bless you. This is the easiest path. But why doesn't everyone take it too? The reason is that without God's grace, we do not get the desire to listen to the stories of saints. With God's grace, everything is smooth and easy. Hearing the stories of the saints is, in a way, keeping their company. The importance of the company of saints is great. It removes our body consciousness and egoism, destroys completely the chain of our birth and death, cuts asunder all the knots of the heart, and takes us to God, whose pure consciousness. It increases our detachment from sense objects, makes us quite different to pleasures and pains, and leads us on the spiritual path. If you know no other sadhana, such as saying God's name, worship, or devotion, but if you take refuge in saints wholeheartedly, they will carry you safely across the ocean of worldly existence. It is for this reason the saints manifest themselves in the world. Even sacred rivers such as the Ganges, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, which wash away the sins of the world, desires that saints should come to them for a bath and purify them. This is the grandeur of the saints. It is on account of a store of merits in past birth that we have attained the feet of Sai Baba. We conclude this chapter with meditation on Sai's form. The handsome Sai stands on the edge of the masjid and distributes udi to each and every devotee, which deeply engrossed in his devotees' welfare. Baba knew the world was an illusion and was always engrossed in supreme bliss. Before him, we humbly prostrate ourselves. Om Sairam. End of chapter 10.